What inspired you to write this book? Because I remember several years ago you talked about how you love fiction and the path you're heading down. Was there a particular reason why you wanted to do this? Cops telling their true
Well,
stories.
I've done a fair amount of nonfiction. I did the Jeffrey
Yeah,
Epstein
yeah.
book, and then I did one on John Lennon, which kind of a personal, emotional thing for me to do that book. And then a few years ago, I got together Matt Eversman. Matt was the actual sergeant portrayed in the movie Black Hawk Down, and
Yeah.
I saw him doing some interviews. He's a friend of mine. I saw him do some interviews, and he gets people to talk about, especially soldiers, to talk about things that they don't normally talk about, that they
Hmm.
won't talk about to their families, etc. And I said, Matt, let's do a book, and that's where walking my combat boots came from. And our mission was that if you've been in combat, you'd say Everton and Patterson got it right. And if you're one of these people that you have a little bit of knowledge and you think you understand stuff, you would read the book and say, okay, I really did not understand the military. Then we did ER nurses, and a similar thing in terms of, everybody loves the nurses, but they have no idea how intense it is to be an ER nurse. I mean,
Hmm.
it would blow your mind. Matt did most of the interviews, and he said, I can only do one a day because it's just too intense. And then we did the law officers, cops, and similar kind of thing. And it's not pro cop, it's not negative cop, it's just cop. There it is, folks. There's we I think we wound up with about 7,000 pages of interviews. And then what we would do is take a 40 or 50 page interview and turn it into 5 or 6 pages. So you'd get a sense for that individual law officer and then a couple of stories. So it's very readable. But once again, you read it and you go, I had no idea. I had no idea. And once again, it's not, it had, I do think if you read the book, you will understand Louisville better, you will understand Minneapolis better, you will understand Memphis better, because part of the equation, when something goes wrong and a cop is in the wrong, I mean, there it is, and he shot a guy in the back or whatever, and it's very clear. What isn't as clear sometimes is how dangerous that job is. And we have to stop saying, well, that's your job. No, it's nobody's job to be in that kind of
Yeah.
danger. It's nobody's job to get spit in the face. It just isn't. And we have to understand, but most of all, we have to understand how difficult it is. I've done a lot of ride alongs, but Matt and I did one during when we were getting this book ready. And in that county, the sheriff said there had been 1,100,000 calls for help that year. That's a lot of volume. And every time, you stop a car and you walk up to the car, it's potentially dangerous. A lot of times it isn't, but it can be. You got to bang on somebody's door. There's this domestic dispute, and especially in this country where 70% of the people have guns,
Yeah.
it's dangerous. And people just need to understand that that's a hard thing. They have those things where you can go with a trained police, where you got 2 or 3 seconds to decide whether you should fire in a shooting gallery. And when they put civilians in there, they'll go, "Oh my God, that's really, really, really hard." Because guess what? I do not want to die. But that's the thing about this book. I think you read it and you go, "Okay, I understand cops in a way that I didn't before," and
Y-
that does not excuse wrongdoing or bad things that happen in that profession at times.
Does the political environment certainly makes it more challenging, it seems, to market books? Has it made it more challenging to do what you do? Because I know you talked about the liberal media, in particular, you feel ignoring this book.
Only in this case, well, Jake Tapper had me on, which was great. But in general, no. But I think part of it is, I don't even think it's necessarily political. Maybe a little political. I think they just assumed it was positive, and it's not necessarily positive about cops. As I say, there are cops in this book who are cowboys, and you would sit there and go like, "Ooh, I don't know about that particular cop." I'm surprised actually that they told the stories that they told. But I think a bigger part of it is they just assumed that they understand cops, and they don't. That's the real trick here. And the producers would go like, "Oh, we know what this is going to be." Well, I don't think you do. And I think if you read the book, you go, "Wow, it's not what I thought it was. It's unbelievably dangerous, and it's complicated."